certain concessions have to be made before a record is air-playable, right? Now, I'm not in the business to compete with makers of hanky-panky, you know. That record has got to be air-playable, man. That can't hurt nobody.
Right.
And it ain't going to move you either. And that's not why I'm writing music, you know. Like, the only reason I put this thing together is I'm a composer, and nobody wanted to hear any of my music. Okay? Pissed me off. So I said, well, if they don't want to hear it, I'm going to put me a band together, and I'm going to make you listen to it, motherfucker. And we did, you know, and it's been working, and people are listening to that stuff. You know, they're wondering why it's there and why it sounds like that, but I make them hear it, you know, and sometimes they like it.
Well, I think Stan Freberg had the concept of pay radio. He came up with a program like one of the early radio shows with skits and everything. It was kind of about the Reagan governor fight and everything.
Yeah.
And he called it pay radio because you can't get a program like that on the radio anymore. It was satire.
Yeah.
And satire doesn't go on network radio anymore. So
that's
it's
exactly
his concept. You know, people buy records and, you know, listen to this thing in their home, so they can't hear it on the radio.
I think that WOR is doing a lot to kill top 40 radio and standard.
Play a lot of records nobody else will.
I think that if people all over the country knew more about the situation here in town, I understand that the FM transistor sales are like 600% above AM transistor sales in New York City. Get that in your sheet.
Yeah.
And,
well, as a matter of fact, another thing we're thinking of doing is like we're going to try to work a little bit about getting our readers to petition radio stations about exposing records that they haven't been playing.
Mm-hmm.
Which, might do something.
I think that somebody should make a statement to the effect that Top 40 radio is unethical.
Would you like to make a statement to that effect?
Top 40 radio is unethical, unmusical, and it sucks. And something ought to be done about it immediately, preferably on a grassroots level.
To get back to the original, not the original, but a previous question about music, and the first piece of music that really grabbed you, and then sort of what you were listening to along the way,
Okay.
what it was doing to you, and what came out of it.
My folks would never let me have music when I was young. My father wanted me to be a scientist.
Childhood,
Yeah, I had a deprived childhood. Well, that's okay. They're all right.
Yeah.
So anyways, but they didn't like music well enough. Well, music, I can take it or leave it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need a record player. What's that? You know, we got a radio and we got a TV set. You know, what's you need a record player for? So I was going to be a scientist, and I was going to be a chemist, as a matter of fact. When I was 6 years old, I was already manufacturing some very effective explosives in the house. By the time I was about 12 or 13, I had nearly taken one of my legs off with a homemade bomb, and then I decided, well, listen, maybe it's time I talked him into getting me a record player. So I got this record player, and my mother automatically decides, well, we got a record player, maybe I'll get some of the records I like. So she went out and bought this record called The Little Shoemaker. But you know, remember that thing? Rappy Tappy too.
Oh, the Haynes brothers, or the four or somebody.
Yeah, the schmuckos. Well, anyway. Meanwhile, I was the first single record I bought was "Work With Me, Annie" by the Midnighters, and then I got "Loop De Loop Mambo" and "Riot in Cell Block Number 9" by the Robins, who later became the Coasters. And I kept trying. My folks would always bash my hand, but I kept listening to Hunter Hancock on the radio in L.A. He was the first R&B disc jockey out there about 11 or 12 years ago. Hunter. Yeah. Old H.H. Well, anyway, he used to play things like "I" by the Velvets. Do you remember that record? So slow ooh-wah songs, you know. I used to listen to that stuff, and then I grew up with all R&B music. Willie Mae Thornton and Johnny Otis on the Peacock label before he had his own label, and then later went to Capitol and fell to pieces and shaved his thing off. And Howlin' Wolf and all all the groups. I really dug the
Yeah.
groups. You know, a lot of wheezing, falsetto stuff.
Yeah, I remember that very well myself.
And Joe Houston. You remember Joe Houston? He played a tenor sax and laid flat in his back and squeaked his octave thing. Okay. Simultaneously, though, I became aware of the presence of real music. Got a hold of an album that I read about in Look magazine, I believe. It was a big article they did on Sam Goody's record shop. It said Sam Goody sells records that nobody else would buy. These people in New York are really crazy. They'll buy anything. Here's this record that's all noise. It's so ugly nobody wants to listen to it. And the name of it is Ionizations by Edgar Varese. And I'm telling you, this thing is really ugly. And I says, that's the record for me. And I looked all over town. I was living in San Diego, which is a little schmuck town. And I couldn't, you know, went to all the big stores, and I couldn't find it. Well, I gave up. One day I went into this, it was a hi-fi shop in a place called La Mesa, which is a town about this big, that grows avocados. And I was going to buy a Joe Houston record to dance to, because I want to learn how to do the bop. And there in the shelf is this gray album. Got a picture of a guy in it with hair like this. You know, looked like a mad scientist, and it said, Ionizations, the complete works of Edgar Varese, Volume 1. And it was all yellow, man. It had been sitting. It was,
I bought a few like that myself.
Yeah, it was recorded in 1950, that record. So I said, wow, will you play that for me on one of your hi-fis? Because I had a little record player like this at the house. And he goes, no, man, do you want this thing? You know, he was really happy to get rid of it. You know, they wanted $6 for it. I said, I got $4. Can I give you some now and give you some more later? He says, no, here, give me your money and take it. I left the Joe Houston record and split with that and went home and put it on. You know, it was so mysterious. I didn't know what was going to come out of it. I thought it was going to eat me alive. And I put it on, and it was groovy. It really was. Ionizations is almost a sonata allegro for 13 percussionists playing 32 different percussion instruments, 2 sirens, different size bass drums, different size and shape snare drums, piano, and just everything, man. It's just beautiful. And these woodwind things that are on there, very dissonant stuff. All the things were written in the 20s and 30s, early 20s and 30s. And it just blew my mind. So then I said, wow, that's classical music. I never heard any of that before, you know. I didn't start with Beethoven. I didn't even know what Beethoven was. In fact, I don't even like Beethoven, you know. I got onto the heavy stuff right away. So I went out and got a cheapy record of The Rite of Spring on the Camden label by the Worldwide Symphony Orchestra, which turned out to be a pretty good version, because I've had about 5 records of that. So I had those 2 albums. I couldn't afford any more for like about 2 years, and I wore them out. And that and my R&B records. Well, I got about 1,000 R&B records now, and I don't have the Rite of Spring, but I still got the rest. Now I've got all the available recordings of his music. Went out and bought the scores to his music. Well, I could get my hands on, and you know, really made a study of what he's doing. And then I heard about 12-tone music, bought the complete works of Anton Webern. Have you ever heard his stuff?
Sounds it, yeah.
And some Schoenberg, and finally got a couple of things by Alban Berg, and a big pile of Bartok. Got his music for piano and percussion. And, so I just lost my mind. The more dissonant it was, the better I dug it, you know. And I went out trying to find, I said, well, if this sounds like this, and this really knocks me out, then what could be weirder than that? There couldn't be anything weirder than that. I kept looking for albums of electronic music, you know, of which there is not enough on the market. The only real selection you can get is on European recordings, which are not widely distributed. So I made this whole collection of contemporary music. The only piece of music that I own that might be considered consonant in the normal sense is this thing, a Suite in F-sharp minor by Ernst von Dohnanyi, and I only got that because somebody gave it to me. It's one of those old Columbia 10-inch LPs.